Awesome. So, little bit quick background on me for those of you who don't know. I am the director of operations here at JEI. I've been working in IT since 2014. I've been the operations manager since 2019. We currently oversee over 1,000 devices and roughly 100 more network that we look after, and 100 networks and customers that we look after, different industries and different environments. So we get to see a large swath of different types of attacks and cybersecurity events. So a little bit of a background. What is phishing? It's cyber attack, essentially deceiving people into revealing sensitive information. It doesn't have to be passwords and credit cards, even though those are often their attacks. Most of the time, this can be even things as simple as other people's emails or information about your guys' organizations. So essentially, the four biggest ways that an attacker will do is they will try impersonation, they'll use bait, or they'll use some kind of a trap where there's like a link to click on or some kind of fake site. A really big one that we've seen a lot of lately has been advertisements. So you'll like Google, hey, I need QuickBooks support, or a common program that you use. You'll quickly jump onto Google and you'll say, Facebook, and the top link will actually be an advertisement that takes you to a fake site that looks like Facebook. When you put in your username and password, it doesn't get in. Exploitation, so then they'll actually use stolen data, maybe not even your stolen data, maybe stolen from a breach that's occurred somewhere else, to try and get into some of your accounts, and then they'll use that access to steal funds or carry out additional attacks, usually then leading to impersonation, bait, or trap. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen a trusted person that you deal with on a regular basis suddenly sends you an email asking you to click on a link or something along those. A lot of times that is due to exploitation, where they're using stolen data, they've got access to that person's email, and now they're using that exploitation to try and do impersonation and use a bait or trap. So it kind of leads to a snowball effect. So obviously the biggest one that we see is email phishing. That I don't think that's any big surprise. What we are starting to see more of is spear phishing or whaling, where it's a little bit more targeted, and attacks are starting to use different combinations. The same tools that we have access to with AI, they're starting to leverage those to use different combinations of publicly available information to target attacks to businesses. Where they know who the directors are of a business, they know who the CEO, the CFO, all those kinds of different positions that are critical to a business, from places like LinkedIn, from your website, from different news articles that have been written about your business. And then they put that together to make the email phishing a lot more targeted. So then that's where the spear phishing and whaling comes from. Business email compromise goes kind of back to a little bit of that, what we were just talking about with the exploitation, where they will actually leverage a business email that's been compromised, that has a certain amount of trust, whether that's internal or external, and they will try and get people to change bank account details, is the most common one that we've seen, of, hey, you've got an outstanding account balance with XYZ account, and the email is coming from that company, and we need you to pay us. And you'll say, well, our accounts are showing up to date, or whatever, and they'll say, oh, sorry, we had some bank account changes. Can you please update it and send us a new wire to this account? And that's one of the most common attacks that we've seen recently. Browser-based attacks have grown as well extensively, mostly with malicious extensions and session hijacking. So even with multi-factor authentication, a lot of times to make our lives easier, our web browsers will store a cookie, which doesn't require you to log in every time you open that account. So when you open your Outlook for the first time, you have to type in your username and password, you have to do your multi-factor authentication, and then that lets you into your Outlook. But to prevent you having to do that every time you open Outlook or go to your SharePoint or Teams or anything like that, it'll store that cookie on your computer. And one of the biggest attacks recently has been session hijacking, where they actually steal that cookie. So they can use that cookie to sign in without knowing your username and password. And unfortunately, it also bypasses multi-factor authentication. Now, the good news is this does require actually using an insecure browser, and it does require attack directly onto your computer. But again, we've seen a rise in that where they will somehow engineer their way onto your computer, whether, again, you're looking for support and you call the wrong phone number, or they contact you and say that they are from JEI or from somewhere else and they don't verify their identity. And then they use free tools like TeamViewer or AnyDesk to remote into the computer and steal those cookies to then continue access to your accounts even once they're off of your computer. One of the largest accelerations recently has been software as a service. This is awesome. This is wonderful in a lot of different ways. It means that we're no longer relying on local computers and servers in our offices to offer the applications and services that we need. For a lot of small businesses, this does come at usually some kind of cost benefit, whether it's immediately realized or otherwise. There's lots of businesses that are moving to cloud-based accounting software, lots of businesses that are moving their file systems to Microsoft Teams and SharePoint or some other cloud solution. And again, there's a lot of wonderful things about that are really good. The problem is in a lot of businesses that we start working with, there's lots of times where we still see people are using unapproved tools. So they run into some kind of issue with Teams or SharePoint, or they don't understand it. So they just switch to using something that they are used to using inside the company. And they use their own personal Dropbox or their own personal OneDrive or something along those lines to get the job done. And that's not necessarily bad. And a lot of this comes down to user training and company policies. And so, I was just having a conversation with one of our customers today about doing some internal training where we will spin up a demo environment of Teams and run through some of the basics of how the employees should be using it and some of the benefits and negatives of that. The other issue that we run into is passwords and multi-factor authentication. It still blows my mind today how many software as a service companies security is an afterthought. They've got this wonderful product, it's saving people lots of time and lots of money, and it's an amazing product, but multi-factor authentication is not mandatory. A lot of times it is available now. A lot of companies have caught on to the importance of that, but it isn't mandatory. And so then it's up to us as managers, as owners, as business users even, to ask, is there multi-factor authentication on this? How do I set it up? And that is one of the biggest things. And then strong passwords. So the stronger your password, obviously, the better. And don't go without multi-factor authentication. But we are still seeing lots and lots of passwords that are breached that are just copies of an old password with a couple of changes in it. And I get that we're creatures of habit, and I also understand that not everybody has availability to a password keeping tool. But our recommendation is that you do have different passwords for all of your accounts. Ensuring that those passwords are not the same will make sure that if one account gets compromised, your other ones aren't. And the other thing is the easiest and quickest way to secure your passwords is actually to use the 3-word rule. So come up with 3 random words, which is pretty easy. Look around your desk, look around your office, and come up with 3 random words. And then just chuck a couple of characters and numbers into that, and you will have a super secure password. So, just looking around my office, picture, car, keyboard, dash 587 exclamation mark. That is going to be a super secure password, and it's not very hard to type in and remember if you do have to. Obviously, again, having that password keeper is going to make that infinitely easier. But software as a service has fueled a whole bunch of risk um, to small businesses. And this is probably one of the biggest ones that we've seen in the last 6 months is the rise of social engineering. So there has been a dip in a lot of smaller of the classic attacks like ransomware this year in 2025. But as many businesses have started to adopt more secure technologies like multi-factor authentication and tighten down on the actual technology side, a lot of our customers, we've got an AI-based email filter. It's super effective and filters out a lot of that. Attackers have started adopting alternative techniques that can start to get around some of those, and they're targeting the human element. And this is where we get to, again, those training and policies of our human resources inside of our business. These are some stats. I do have the email or the link to the website that I can share afterwards if anybody's interested. But in 2025, as of Q3, 60% of the breaches involved a human element. There is $2.7 billion lost to business email compromise. The two largest areas of attack have been vishing, which is basically voice. They're actually phoning people, and the other one is smishing, which is based off of SMS. They're texting you. And the reason for that is that there is not a easy way to put some kind of filter on that, right? We can easily put one on email, but managing phone numbers, whether they're business owned or not, and filtering text messages has become extremely difficult, and there's not an easy centralized way for us to provide a service for that. And obviously the biggest one then being voice. How do we filter out phone calls and that kind of thing? And so that kind of is, again, is where this has been prompted today, and we'll get into some of the solutions for those a little bit later. Core of social engineering. So, what is social engineering, and how do we stop it? So, got a little diagram here, but essentially at its core, social engineering is just an attempt to trick somebody into revealing that sensitive information. And that sensitive information may not be as sensitive as you think, in that maybe you'll get a phone call and they're just asking who your direct report is. And they might frame it in a way that's not completely obvious, but then they gather that information and start to use it. And so one of the tactics that they'll use once they have the information is they'll try and create fear and urgency so that there's a hasty action. Now, this says hasty click, but it's more of a hasty action now when we start talking about those vishing where they're calling. One of our clients got a phone call, your bank account has been hacked. I've seen and heard of other ones where your license is expiring, your invoice is 45 days late, the account is overdue and it's going to be closed down. All those kinds of things are to try and create fear and urgency of, if you don't take action now, it's going to have some detrimental impact. The other one is authority. So they will either use authority of a business that you have a trust with, or they will use authority of somebody in your own business that you have a trust with, and impersonating that authority figure, of that they are from the accounting department of XYZ company. They are from XYZ bank, and we are part of the cybersecurity team, or something along those lines, to dominate and to imply that there is an authority so that there's compliance. And then the last one that sometimes gets mixed in, sometimes it's a completely separate tactic, is that they'll target people's curiosity or greed, so that there is some kind of action. Offering things like free downloads, prizes, bonuses, 15% off. Hey, if you pay that invoice now, that will override the typical charge or will extend your account by X amount of days or whatever, along those lines. They'll try and get that, sweeten the deal, I guess, is kind of the idea behind that. So how do we stop these kinds of things? And the first and biggest one is trust but verify, right? If you get a phone call or a text message from someone that you aren't expecting, slow down, even if there is that sense of urgency. The quickest and easiest thing to do is to hang up the call and call the company or the person back on a trusted phone number. So in the case where you get a phone call from a bank, from JEI Tech, from anybody, and you aren't really sure if it is that person that's calling you, the easiest and quickest thing to do is to say to the person, hey, I'm just going to hang up and call you back on the company number. If it is legitimate, that person should be totally fine with that. If it is not legitimate, they will probably immediately start saying, no, this is super urgent. Please don't hang up. If you hang up now, we might lose access. This might happen along those lines. And essentially why that is as a phone system provider, I'm very aware of how easy it is to spoof a phone number calling out. However, receiving a phone call back and spoofing a phone number to receive a phone call back is much harder. And so that's where probably the easiest thing is that trust but verify. Just take the time. It is sometimes a pain. If you're expecting it and you've got other ways of verifying a person's identity, if we're talking about us calling you, if we give you a ticket number and you've got that in your email or something along those lines, there's likely a chance that it is legitimate. But if you are ever hesitant about it at all, none of my technicians will ever hesitate. If you say, hey, I'm going to hang up and call you back, none of them will ever tell you, please don't. So if you ever do get those kinds of phone calls and they start doing that, that would be a quick way to get around that. So why are SMBs and their executives key targets? So a lot of these are because a simple thing of that a lot of small businesses think they're too small. They're insignificant. Cyber criminals aren't going to target them. And the reason that they do get targeted is because they don't have the tools of larger enterprises to tackle these things. They don't have the policies in place. They don't have the regular user training. Some of our larger clients, they have mandatory regular training, not only at a digital level, but in person as well for these kinds of things. And so the other reason is that a lot of time the executives have access to vital business, customer, and financial information that then can be exploited, even if it's not necessarily against your business, against your own customers, your own people that you contact and use. They can use that information against that. And so what we've seen recently is that these attacks, even if they aren't able to get your money, they turn around and start targeting your customers. And so they get a customer list from you and you say, no, I'm not going to pay X amount to keep that information private or to whatever. And then they turn around and they go through that customer list and they start contacting the customers and say, hey, did you know company X was breached and we got this and this information? We'll post this on the dark web. Unless you pay us X amount. And unfortunately, we're getting into this like third and fourth hand blackmail that there's a risk even if you don't want to pay. So the short-term impact of that obviously is financial loss, operational disruption, reputation damage, and legal consequences. Those are the short-term things. The problem is that long-term, a lot of small businesses land up going out of business because there's customer attrition, that brand and reputation damage lands up being ongoing. Again, as we get into this world where they're actually targeting customers and the information that they gather from those attacks, this is becoming a much larger issue. And what we're also starting to see is with the Canadian government and other things like insurance and even contractors and that kind of thing, where they're increasing their reporting, their certification demands, and their audits, this compliance is becoming an issue. And we have a customer the other day that was applying for a tender for a job, and one of the questions was, have you had a recent cyber incident? And if you haven't, can you please provide this information? And if you have, can you please provide this information? So there are companies that are starting to include this as part of their decision making on who they will or won't work with. And then obviously there's a lot higher costs when it comes to insurance and getting confidence, both from investors and banks, when there is that kind of information. So implementing a layered security approach is critical. Just having a firewall, just having an antivirus, those things aren't enough anymore. And so the layered security approach is listed here. In the title, I said I'd give you 4. I've given a couple more because I kept thinking of more. And probably the one that I'd like to focus the most on is the awareness training and incident response. So if it's good, a lot of our customers now, we've been working with them for several years, and we've gotten those top 4. We've got knocked them out of the park. We've hardened attack surfaces, we've strengthened authentication, we've limited access, and we have all kinds of monitoring and detection happening at all kinds of different levels inside the organization, which is awesome. And we're putting guardrails up to try and help employees succeed. But one area that we've started to see a lot of people falling down is that awareness training and incident response. So even if your incident response plan is call JEI or call some trusted partner, at least having that and having the employees and your company aware of what next steps are when they feel like maybe they clicked on a link, maybe they answered a phone call and gave information they shouldn't have. What do I do next? And foster that awareness training and incident response kind of go hand in hand, because the awareness training not only trains the users on how to respond and actually how to implement that response plan, but it also talks to the culture of the company of not shaming employees when they accidentally do click on the link and they do accidentally answer that phone call and do something. I would much rather know about something and take action on it than not know about it and then have a whole bunch of mess to clean up afterwards, right? And so, like I said, these top 3, 4 monitor and detect, I'm kind of going to skip through mostly because we have mostly done that. We've got email security in place. We've got firewalls in place to prevent people clicking on links as best as we can. We require multi-factor authentication at all of our clients. We restrict access to essential systems to prevent lateral movement. We have monitoring and detection deployed across all of the devices that we manage. But security awareness training and incident response, attending this webinar technically is an awareness training session. So, there's lots of free webinars out there that we can attend that just bolster and help this. But even inside the company, if you don't get regular training of, hey, what is MFA? Hey, what is phishing email look like? Hey, what is vishing? What is smishing? And all these different acronyms that people that aren't me come up with. I don't fully understand all of them, but the reality of it is just that regular training and pairing that with incident response. Again, your response plans, we conduct fire drills and all kinds of different drills in a business. When it comes to IT and cybersecurity and business risk, it should be the same thing. We have backup response plans and incident response plans when it comes to your data, and we do test them regularly. Most of our servers and computers that we back up are tested every 2 weeks. But I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who wants to chat about like the larger risk involved with, hey, suddenly we don't have access to our email across our company. What does that look like? Hey, we've lost access to this or that or the next thing at this location, that we've lost internet access at this location and it's going to be down for a week. What are next steps? What is our incident response plan? All the way down to as simple as internally, a employee at the business clicked on a link. What is our response plan? What do I do? Who do I contact next? Do I contact my manager? Do I call JEI? And obviously that's going to be different for every business. But essentially, if you don't have these response plans in place and your employees don't know where to go or what to do next, a lot of times they're not going to do anything. And that's one of the biggest dangers that we've seen. So let's jump into some of the real world examples. So I've alluded to a banking call. I'm going to take you through exact step by step what happened, and then we'll get into some of the other real world examples. So the banking call is one that happened just a couple weeks ago with one of our customers. Customer received a phone call from a bank saying, "Hey, your bank account's been compromised." But what was the most scary about the call is that they had critical key employee names and decision makers that were listed on the account. They had those people's emails and phone numbers, including personal cell phone numbers. Now, the reality of it is a lot of that information is floating around on the internet. Based on this customer, the information is available on their website for some of that. They list out who their CEO and their CFO are. They listed out those people's contact details on LinkedIn. So those were available publicly and available there. The phone numbers, I don't know where they got those, especially the personal cell phone numbers, but they easily could have been had from any kind of dark web compromise that may not have even been the client's fault. You know, if Facebook gets breached, if LinkedIn gets breached, a lot of times that information gets leaked as well, but they did have that information. And so they had that urgency, right? The account was compromised. There's somebody in your account right now, and we need to lock it down. So they said to the person, "Please, can you give us the password for your account?" And they did. And they said, "The next step to verify your identity is we're going to send you a 6-digit code. Please, can you give us that 6-digit code?" Now, that 6-digit code, they made it out to be was to verify their identity, but it was actually them physically, digitally logging into their bank account from wherever the attacker was calling from. Once they got into the bank account, they immediately started to try and transfer funds out. At that point in time, the CFO walked into the room where the employee was on the phone call and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Hey, our account's been compromised by the bank. I've got them on the phone. They said they're busy doing it. I gave them this code." And the CFO said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I haven't seen or heard anything. I haven't gotten any notifications. I'm going to call JEI." And so they called us and they said, "Hey, we got this phone call. This is the situation." And so they got a hold of one of our technicians, and our technician said, "Hey, listen, I think it sounds like a scam. If it is a scam, when you tell them that you're going to hang up and call the phone number on the back of your bank card, they're going to freak out. If it isn't a scam, they're going to say, 'Yeah, please hang up. Please call us back ASAP. We're going to lock this account out.'" And sure enough, as soon as they hung up with our technician and said to the person on the phone, the scammer, "Hey, we're going to call the number on the bank account," they started losing their mind. "No, they're in your account right now. You can't hang up. If you hang up with they're going to steal your money." And so they immediately hung up, called their bank, and the bank was able to stop a wire transfer of over $48,000 leaving their account. And so again, their incident response plan in that case was kind of based on luck of that they immediately called us and then it was able to be prevented. But again, it comes down to training and understanding and just being aware that these kinds of things are happening and they're very good at their job. I listened to the call recording of that and they are very convincing and they're very good at their jobs of making you feel like they are who they say they are. The next one is email password entered. So I actually fell for this. This is actually my story. I luckily it was an internal phishing test. But essentially what landed up happening is I got an email from Rogers saying that a change had been made on our account. And it happened to coincide with a change that was made on our account about a week before. And we had just renewed our contract for our cell phones at our business. And I got a notification that the account was closing in 3 days for non-payment. And so I clicked on the link, I went to it, and I actually forwarded to another employee in our business too, and they didn't catch it as well. And when I clicked on the link and it took me to the web page, that's when I noticed. But I did enter my credentials already at that point. And luckily, like I say, the result was I got sent to our training. And so what I want to highlight on this is it says I paid the money. I didn't pay the money. I got the training. But essentially, what landed up happening is this was a key reminder that even timing sometimes, and sometimes it's luck, but timing of an attack can be everything too. Of that, we literally had made changes the week before to our account, and so the fact that this came in at that time, it didn't help that I was looking at the email on my phone. Once I got the training and I realized that it was a phishing, and I opened the email on my computer, I could see the email address it was from. I could see the link when I moused over it, but I was looking at it on my cell phone. I wasn't in the office. I was away on training. I was flying, and I wasn't able to actually easily see that on my cell phone. So that is probably one of the biggest critical things that I have found recently, is that these phishing emails on a computer are a lot easier to spot than on your cell phone. And so that's something to be aware of. Another one that we ran into recently is an email change. Essentially, what happened is the attacker purchased company s.com. They tweaked the company email domain. So instead of company.com, it was company s.com. There's many different variations of this where they are using characters now. So it'll be company.com, but the A will be like a funny A that has a hidden symbol over it. It's called ASCII characters. It is unfortunate, but it is happening. Our spam filter did catch the email in this case, but the client called and requested it released and said, well, we have a trusted relationship with this company. And so the attacker used an invoice that was valid and was outstanding for this customer. And it came down to that the employee almost paid the bill, but again, the CFO was able to raise the red flag and catch this. But essentially, like the reality of it is it came down to human error once again. Our spam filter caught it, but the client and our technician who was on the phone with the client were like, hey, this email is actually legitimate. It looks like company.com, and we deal with them, and we do have an outstanding invoice with them. And the worst part was that they had that outstanding invoice. And now that is something that is that business email compromise, is even though the domain was different, I don't know where or how they got that copy of that invoice, but somehow they did. Whether that was they compromised the company that was contacting our customer, we have no indicators of compromise on our customer's end, or if it was intercepted in transmission or somehow or the other they got that invoice. I don't know how that happened, but that even can be a warning sign. Like just because it is a legitimate invoice doesn't mean that the email is legitimate. And it kind of is a little bit hard to navigate. But the reality of it is that has happened. I have seen it happen. And then the last one is text message. So like I said, we started to see this. Attacker sent text message claiming to be someone they knew. Attacker then sent them a link on the mobile phone. Mobile phone is not managed by us, so the link, and if the mobile phone had been behind our WatchGuard, I do believe it may have blocked it, but they weren't. They were on mobile data, or if they weren't in the office, I'm not 100% sure on their physical location when this happened. They clicked the link, they put their email password in, and immediately we got an alert saying that somebody was trying to sign in from Venezuela on their email account. So we locked down the email account. And it wasn't until we contacted the user, started going through like, have you entered your password anywhere recently? And they said, yeah, I clicked on this link that somebody texted me. And so that was how we found that. But essentially, again, probably the areas that I'd like to highlight, if anything comes away from this, is regular awareness training and incident response plans. Again, a lot of our customers and a lot of companies that even aren't our customers have all kinds of different layers of security in place now that are going to prevent a lot of the automated and old way attacks. Of remoting into a computer, logging into doing something, clicking, downloading and installing some piece of software. A lot of our tools are going to prevent or stop that kind of action from happening. But what is happening is these are starting to target the weak link of the human element that we can't always protect. other than regular training and having that incident response plan communicated to everybody. Essentially, I want to ask if there's any questions. Feel free to ask them now.